If you want to dominate in Warzone, you can only do that with the right settings. So I've put together this insanely detailed guide for the best controller settings and graphics settings to infinitely improve your gameplay. Diving in, the first thing I kind of want to talk about obviously is going to be the controller settings, because I want to get y'all aiming and moving as best as physically possible so that you can dominate in Verdansk. And while movement has in fact slowed down, I know for a fact that it is very important to know how to move in this game. We're going to go in detail on some of the things and how they work so that you can improve as you go along within Verdansk. So the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is actually our button layout. Now, I know a lot of people choose to do something like tactical, or they'll do bumper jumper, or they'll even do stick and move, but I use default. And of course, the reason why is because I actually have, the Expel Pro controller, which is super cool. They're on discount right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But they've got back paddles, which is what I use to map my front face buttons to. That way I never have to take my right thumb off the analog stick. And again, we'll discuss this a little bit more in detail in a bit, but I use default and default on my stick layout preset. But if you don't have something like a pro controller that has back paddles, maybe try changing this out to figure out what works the most comfortably for you. However, moving further down, we do have the horizontal stick sensitivity and the vertical stick sensitivity. You may immediately notice the horizontal is set to a 1.6 while the vertical is set to a 1.3. My explanation for that is because when you're looking at targets, right, you can see that we've got all these targets in here. You can see one, my freaking aim assist is absolutely absurd. I can literally take my hand off and you can see when it drops for the aim assist and drop, and we're back on and drop. It's actually kind of hilarious. But what you'll notice is there's not a lot of people that are going to be way up in the sky. We're not playing something that has jetpacks or anything where you're going to be flying around. In fact, there's not even PRDs or RDBs or anything that launches you in the sky now. You are rarely going to be looking up in Verdansk unless you're looking at someone on a building. With that in mind, I like to keep my horizontal, my left to right, going a little bit quicker so I can snap left to right a little bit faster, but I'm often not going to be looking up and down as quickly as I am left to right. So because of that, I've set my horizontal to 1.6 and my vertical to 1.3, and that's exactly what you'll see right here. Now, of course, the reason I actually use a lower sensitivity, and I actually do even further than that, I go even more advanced for certain things, and we're going to discuss that as well. But the reason that I use such a low sensitivity compared to a lot of people that you'll see is because I believe, and this is shown in detail by professional players that have done this their entire career. Hey there, Editor Expel here. Just wanted to take a quick second to remind you to double check you've hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss another video. Anyway, back to it. I believe that having a lower sensitivity will in fact make you way more accurate because it's easier to just flick your stick left and right than it is to try and do micro movements. And when people are constantly talking about mouse and keyboard versus controller, controller has a big advantage because they have that infinite plane. So if you look at my controller here, instead of constantly, like if I was on a mouse, I would have to swipe to keep turning right. But on controller, and I'll go ahead and zoom in, you just press and hold. So I'm just doing this infinitely, which is way better in a situation where you need to turn all the way around. And that's why I kind of love controller over mouse and keyboard, even though I used to be a full-blown mouse and keyboard player. Moving past that, I don't recommend doing any simplified controls or any low motor strain presets or anything like that. I also don't recommend turning on bumper ping. And again, I'll explain this in a little bit when I go in detail about the controller and the way that I use it. You don't need to swap anything unless you personally feel like this is, you like your top buttons more than your bottom buttons. You feel like it's better. But again, we're going to talk about the controller that I use and why it's better. Now, moving into controller vibration, if you don't know, controller vibration makes you a worse player. This is not even a question, actually, because controller vibration, when you have it on, which I don't even have vibration motors in my controller, when you have it on, what'll happen is it'll shake your thumb a little bit. So when you're trying to aim at an enemy and you're trying to make sure that you stay on target, a lot of the times what you want to do is just slowly pull down against the recoil pattern. So right here you can see this is the recoil pattern of the gun. So when I shoot, it's going up and to the right and then up and to the left. So when I shoot at a target, I'm going down into the left and then down into the right. I'm thinking about this while I'm doing it. Eventually it'll become muscle memory. It doesn't matter what gun it is. You'll figure out how to do it unless it has a completely random pattern, which is actually how it was back in Modern Warfare 2 for a short period of time. Plus they had bloom. None of it made any sense. But I highly recommend that you turn off vibration because it'll shake your thumb, making it harder for you to aim. I mean, I guess you don't need vibration intensity either because you're not going to do that. Now, trigger effect. A lot of people are not going to have trigger effect on their settings. And the reason why is because you have a controller that doesn't have haptics. Turn that off. What the trigger effect actually does is when you go to pull your trigger, what'll happen is it'll be like a real gun. I actually had this conversation with my dad and he loves using it because he likes the realism that comes with it, with haptics. But you'll go to pull your trigger on your stick, right? I'll grab this other one. You'll go to pull it and it'll get more and more tense as you get right here until you finally hit the point to where it's actually pulling the trigger and then it'll slap straight down and you'll feel that in the controller. I do not recommend that. It is the exact same thing. It hinders you more than it will help you. The next thing is going to be your Deadzone inputs, and these are complicated, but they don't necessarily have to be. I'm going to explain them as simple as I possibly can by setting everything to default, which actually is super incorrect. Go ahead and set your settings to exactly what you see here, okay? And then follow exactly what I do. And I apologize that I'm sick. Give me 2 seconds. I am going to cough. So right here, you're going to start with 0, 100, 0, 100, 0, 0. Now, personally, I've had this controller for about 6 months. It does have stick drift. I mean, all PlayStation controllers will eventually get stick drift. You can get something like Hall effects, which obviously is great. And that's supposed to eliminate stick drift. You may have to calibrate those controllers. I'll, again, get into all of this in a little bit. But the stick drift happens naturally and is actually not a bad thing whenever you're playing a game that has such intense aim assist. Aim assist is absurd in this game. There's multiple kinds of aim assist, which is rotational, and I believe, like, I can't even think. I have a whole video on it. Check it out on my main channel. I'll put the links down below. But either way, what you're going to want to do to test your stick sensitivity is kind of go in and it says test stick Deadzone, right? So what you want to do is flick your I'll show you on my camera, flick your sticks. Just flick them out in different directions. And what you can do is you can see on the left stick, it says, you know, -1, -2, stuff like that, right? At some points, you'll every once in a while get like a -3, but I'm just flicking it back and forth to see what my max number is there. So we're going to focus on that left one for now. So go ahead and turn off the test and then change your left minimum to 2, right? And then turn it back on. And then you want to see if you're getting any weird Deadzone drift or anything like that. And it looks like if I barely flick it, it can get stuck right here. You can see the vertical axis actually says -1. Feel free to zoom in if you need to. But the vertical axis actually says -1 if I barely flick it. So we're going to change that one more. And now, no matter what way I go, I'm inside that Deadzone to where no matter what, I'm not going to get any sort of stick drift. Now, I personally believe that the left stick is way more important to fix than the right stick. And in fact, if you have your right stick set to anything above 0, you're going to miss your shots. It is that simple. The other day I had a conversation with my brother. I had him change his Deadzone to 3 on his right stick because he really hates stick drift. And he did change it, right? He changed that Deadzone, and then he hopped into a zombies match, and all of a sudden he couldn't aim for crap. He was terrible. He could not hit a shot, and he was like, what is going on? I can't hit my shot. So if you change this right stick to anything above 0, you will miss your shots. It is that simple. Do not change your right stick in any capacity on the minimum or on the maximum. You want 0 and 100 on that right stick. On that left stick, again, you can change that lower minimum, and I'm gonna explain the max as well, but you can see I do get 3% stick drift on that right stick. That's absolutely fine. That 3% is gonna help me with aim assist because I'm never taking my right thumb off of the stick, right? So I'm always on there, which means I'm always in control. If you have a regular controller, a regular PlayStation controller, you will have to take your right thumb off of that stick to hit your jump, hit your swap weapons, hit your reload, hit your crouch, slide, whatever it may be. But I do not do that, which is another reason why I use this Pro controller. So I have 3%, but I'm leaving it. Now on the left one, what the left stick max does is if I'm trying to run at full velocity, I have to push it all the way to the end before it'll fully start. It will not auto tack sprint unless I push all the way to the edge of my controller. And while that may just be a single millisecond, it does make a difference when fights end in less than 500 milliseconds sometimes. These weapons are very powerful and can make a difference in whether or not you live or die if you don't have your dead zone set up properly. So what I like to do is I will actually set my left stick max to 70. This will give you enough wiggle room to where you can slowly kind of push around, and I'll show you this right here. You can still slowly, I'll show you on my controller, lightly push it, and you don't full sprint max, but at 70%, you start that. I'm not all the way to the edge. Now I'm all the way to the edge, but it'll start doing that sprinting at 70% of pushing your analog stick, which is the exact reason that I like to set that to 70%, and it actually makes a big difference in your gameplay. Now, I accidentally jumped out of the firing range, sorry. But the next thing is, now that we've finished our dead zone inputs, we're gonna hop into aiming, and a few settings obviously you wanna go ahead and make sure you have turned on are your target aim assist and your ADS aim assist. If you don't have these on, you will not get aim assist. I mean, it's in the name of it. So please, for the love of God, turn that on. And then make sure you don't have look inversion turned on. And then your sensitivity multiplier, you should not touch this. You can change it if you want to go faster, like look around faster while you're in a ground vehicle, or look around slower while you're in a ground vehicle or your air vehicles. But I don't touch this in the slightest because it leaves me knowing exact sensitivities whenever I hop into the game, so that I have full control over every vehicle that I hop in, or literally whatever I'm doing at the time. So what we're going to do is, one, we're never going to touch the motion sensor either. That's just unnecessary. We're gonna hop into the aiming advanced settings. Again, look inversion, do not touch this. This is like the stupidest thing ever. It will mess you up. But the ADS sensitivity timing, I used to have this on gradual, but I found that I like it and I feel more snappy whenever I set this to instant. As you can see to the left of my camera, it says instant sensitivity multiplier is applied immediately when aiming down sights. So when you go to aim down sights, right, you have that little in-between transition. So when you do that, you want that sensitivity to change as you go to ADS, because you're immediately trying to hone in on that target. When you're ADSing, you are trying to hone in on that target. So if you ADS and in the middle of it, you're still flicking past them, that's a big problem. You don't want to do that. So for me, if I'm ADSing and I'm trying to get on target, if it's too fat, like if I can do this when I'm trying to aim down, then I'm flicking way past them, because sometimes my thumb is going to be a little bit harsher on that right analog stick. So what I like to do is have that set to immediate, so that I can be directly on target and always be centered, and it's super quick to say snapped on. So with that in mind, we're gonna leave that on instant. Yours may be set to gradual. Again, I recommend changing it to instant. Third person ADS correction type assist, of course, and then aim response curve type. The best way that I can explain this is that if you set it to standard, this is good for people that are new to the game, have no idea how their sensitivity works, and they're still trying to dial it in. That's great. If you are any bit better than that, change it to dynamic. If you are the best player on the freaking world and you have incredible aim, set it to linear. If you are very good with your analog sticks, set it to linear. The reason why is this makes it to where if you're super accurate, no matter what you're doing, your character is not going to speed up or slow down when they're turning, right? So if you watch me spin, you'll notice that at the beginning, I'm a little slower and it gets faster and faster as I go. That's called a dynamic curve type, right? So when I go to do that, it does make a difference in when I'm trying to turn. So I like that little bit of speed up and that little bit of slow down at the end of it. But linear is exact. Now there is like 3%, I think, where it does that speed up, but dynamic, I think, is like up to like 12%. 12% of your turn is slower at the beginning and slower at the end, but linear is a much lower percent. It's a little bit confusing, I realize. My recommendation, just set it to dynamic. That's gonna make a big difference. And then jumping into custom sensitivity per zoom, we have different things along the way. Now, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll change a specific thing. I don't know where it's at actually. I think they set like their ADS sensitivity multiplier or something like that. I wonder if it, yeah. So you can see right here, we have ADS sensitivity multiplier. don't use that. For the love of God, do not use that, because it is an all-around ADS sensitivity multiplier. So if you set that to a lower number, that means on snipers, you're also gonna move much slower. And that is not a good thing. I know that people may think that it's a good thing, but if you're trying to track somebody that's flying in, you will not be able to track that player. So what I like to do is I'll set my low zoom a little bit lower. So you have 0.85, 0.85, 0.85. Low zoom up to 5 zoom, I set to lower than 1. And then as we get up to 6 and 7 times zoom, we do 105. And then at 8 and 9 or high zoom, I do 1.15. That means that when I have a sniper, and I'll even show you, when I have a sniper, I go a little bit faster. But when I have this, obviously, you know, I'm not zoomed in as much, which is why it looks the way that it does. But it looks like this is faster, but these are closer to the same speed, because if I was zoomed in and I was trying to track somebody far, if I was at 0.85, and I'll even show you this actually, if I was at 0.85 on a high zoom, it's way slower. I don't know if I can explain it in the firing range, but it is much, much slower, which is why I don't recommend it, because you won't be able to track enemies even running or in a vehicle or anything going relatively quickly. So between aiming and between your movement, which we are going to get a little bit further into, those two things are super important. And like I said, I use a specific kind of controller. As you can see right here, I have two controllers, right? We've got an Xbox and we've got a PlayStation 5 controller. I don't know what this is trying to connect to right now, but we've got an Xbox and a PlayStation 5 controller. These are the Expel Pro controllers, and you can get yours at expel.gg. And right now they're doing a massive sale. It's $189, which is super low, considering that you can max them out to $450, and they will knock it down if you use code Expel at checkout to $189 plus shipping. It is an insane deal. And I guarantee you that they are losing money on this, because after I take, you know, whatever commission I get from these orders, I don't know what's going on over there. But with that in mind, the reason that I use these, the reason that I find that these controllers are so important is, like I said, you've got these front facing buttons here, right? These right here. And when you're using a controller, you're going to go to aim. And if you're in a gunfight, you have to move your finger off to touch these, right? You want to jump, you got to hit the X button, right? You want to slide, you got to hit the circle button. You want to switch weapons, triangle, reload, square. Every time you do that, you actually have to take your right thumb off of the analog stick. And I'll show you that right here. So let's say I want to run and jump. I can do all of this. Oh, well, I don't have my thing on. I can do all of this without taking my right thumb off of the analog stick, right? So if I'm in the middle of a gunfight, if I want to be super accurate and hit these shots while jumping and sliding, I can keep my thumb on the analog stick. And the cool thing is with these controllers, you can actually map out all of your front-facing buttons to the back. In fact, what I've done is I've actually set it up to where my pings, which ironically you can't see in the firing range, I've got my pings set to my top paddles. So what you can do, if you like it that way, you can do square and triangle on your back paddles as well. But because I don't, you know, reload and try and aim at someone, I don't see an issue with pressing the square button on the front. So I'll keep my X in my circle, my X as the bottom right. So I'm pressing that bottom right, and then my circle is on that bottom left. And then to ping, I'll touch either of the top ones. So it's super cool because these have these back paddles, but also if if you're someone that often finds themselves switching their L1 and R1 and their L2 and their R2 because these are faster, you can actually lock these out and you've got little mouse clicks right here. Now that also comes in handy whenever you're, say, trying to use a semi-automatic weapon. So if I, say, go into my loadout and I pull out this pistol, it's more instant and I shoot faster whenever I have these little mouse clicks on the back. And they're all adjustable. No matter what controller you get over there, if you get the Pro variant or you build a custom controller, you get these on the back, which I think is super freaking cool. So you can automatically shoot much quicker, because if I'm to change this, I don't know if you can tell the difference because it's a minuscule change, but that's with the trigger going full, and that's with, oh, well, of course. And this is when the trigger is set to the mouse click. So I shoot faster that way. And no, there's no modifications in this that make the controller illegal or anything. These are things that are fully allowed based on what Call of Duty has going on. In fact, Call of Duty is sponsored by another controller company. So that's how you know that these are 100% legal. With that in mind, you can become a much better player by using one of these controllers. And I realize this feels like a big ad. Obviously, I get commission from this, but my big thing is that when I switched to controller, I wanted to be able to play similar to how a mouse and keyboard plays, where you have separate buttons for separate things so that you can do everything at the same time. Because on mouse and keyboard, you can actually use your mouse to aim no matter what you're doing. If I'm running, I'm jumping, I'm doing anything, I use my mouse to aim, and I don't have to worry about taking my hand off of my mouse to press something else. But if I'm on controller, I constantly have to take my right thumb off my right analog stick to hit something, right? So I've changed that to where it's super, super easy to just stay in a gunfight and go absolutely insane. So I can run around, slide, jump, stuff like that, all at the same time, all while keeping my right analog stick on my right thumb on that analog stick, which again goes to talk about that dead zone, where because you constantly have your right thumb on that analog stick, you don't have to worry about whether or not you have stick drift, because it will not make a difference. You have constant control over that aiming, which is what I really, really love. But moving into the next set of settings, we have a few things that make a big difference. And this one specifically is talking about Omni movement. So Omni movement is obviously something that is a pain point for a lot of people. In fact, every time I watch a Westy video or a Tactical Brit video, they are constantly fussing about the Omni movement. They're like, oh, it's too complicated, this, that, or the other thing. Super ignorant. And I'm not saying they are, I'm saying the idea that Omni movement is worse is ignorant, because it takes 5 seconds to learn. It is so much easier than you think, and I'm gonna explain it to you right here and how it can get infinitely better if you set up the correct settings, which is what I'm gonna show you. And I wish that they set up these by default, but you have to change them yourself. So sprint assist, a lot of people will set this to on. Do not do that. Set it to tactical sprint assist unless you are using a shotgun. Shotguns are the only things that you need to just turn this off altogether. But I always, always, always set it to tactical sprint assist because I'm never using a shotgun. Set sprint assist delay to 0, sprint assist sideways to on, and sprint assist backwards to on. So what, again, that allows you to do is that you immediately start tactical sprinting left and right, and then forward and backward by just pressing. You never at any point, and this is, by the way, going to help you with some other controls that we talk about in just a second, but this is making a massive difference to where you never at any point have to press your analog stick, right? To run, you have to press this in. That's how running works in Warzone, which, by the way, will eventually cause stick drift. Ironically, that's how it works. So if you never have to press that button, then guess what? Less stick drift. So you don't have to change those dead zones as much. So I just press forward, press backwards, super, super simple, super, super easy. And that is literally Omni movement in a nutshell. Of course, you can dive. You know, you can dive sideways, you can dive front to back. If I do this, you can slide sideways, you can slide front to back. Like, it is super simple to do those things. And it makes you a much better player to have Omni movement, and it takes 5 seconds to learn. So the big thing is before Omni movement was thrown in, you could only slide forward to back, which means if you want to fight this dude, you have to run this way and then slide out and turn in the middle of the slide, which again is something that is forcing you to have a pro controller. There is no option for that. It is almost impossible to hit your target if you don't have a pro controller and you're fighting someone around the corner if you aren't activating Omni movement. But for me, I of course have it set up to where I can just slide around a corner like that, get the elimination, and then move back. It's super easy because you're sliding while looking that direction. So if you have that sprint assist on for sideways, you're always going to be hitting your shots on these targets because you're sliding sideways. So think about that next time you go to challenge an enemy, when you go to slide out to get those shots on. That's all you have to do. You don't have to look one direction, slide and turn. You look the direction you're going to go, and then you slide out and shoot while you're sliding. So you're hitting those shots on the enemy much more accurately. It's going to make you a much better player. It's going to help you infinitely. Next up, mantle assist, turn that off. Crouch assist, turn that off. Corner slice, turn that off. Corner slice is a little weird. I don't think I can actually show you on this, but what it does is it'll turn your gun sideways. And The only way that I know to show that is by basically laying down, turning, and you can see this right here. This is what'll happen to your gun, is it turns it like crooked, right? So you'll see that my gun's completely crooked. And I don't know what it is, but from what I can tell, it feels like I'm less accurate whenever it does that. I know it's probably not, but I can't hit my shots like that. So what I always do is I'll turn corner slice off. Now, next up, we have our slide and our dive behavior. So you can see that I personally set mine to hybrid. Hybrid's actually broken right now. If you set it to slide only, you'll actually be able to slide directly into prone from what I heard. I don't think I can do it here, but yeah, I don't know if that's the truth. But apparently there's an issue with hybrid. I do not ever slide into a prone. Like it's super, super rare that I would do that. So I'm going to keep mine on hybrid. To understand how these work, you have tap to slide, and what that does is it'll add a short delay, like a 50 millisecond delay to how quickly you slide, which means you're not going to get that instant feedback. That is a big reason that people feel that Omni movement is floaty. Do not use tap to slide. It is super dumb to do that. You are making yourself a worse player. The same thing, except exponentially worse, is setting it to tap to dive. So on tap to slide, you press and hold your circle button. I'm sorry, I'm not using the front facing button. You press and hold your circle button so that you can dive. But if I go in and I change this to tap to dive, what you're going to do is you're going to press your circle and it's going to dive. And then you hold the circle and you slide. You are more often going to slide than you are to dive. So that is infinitely worse than tap to slide. And I don't imagine anybody's using that. If you're using that, what are you doing? Please stop it. Diving into that though, you also have slide only, which gets rid of the option to dive so that you have an instant slide. So instead you instantly slide and you can see the instant feedback of me pressing it on my controller. The same thing goes for dive only, but hybrid is what I use now. In my previous videos, I only recommended slide only because I felt you didn't need to dive in this game. I was very wrong. Diving is so very important and will save your ass so much, and it's only in situations where you need to dive over an object to get cover. So there's a lot of situations where I will be getting sniped, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my dive to get out of there because people always expect you to slide. The only issue with this is that you have to press your left analog stick. So I will be pressing my left analog stick, and sometimes I will accidentally do that while I'm trying to slide, and I'll dive and it'll get me killed. But it's just something you have to learn. It takes a little bit of time and you're gonna get used to it as long as you set up those tactical sprint settings the way that I mentioned earlier, the sprint assist. As long as you set that up the way that I said earlier, you're gonna be able to run without pressing that left analog stick, meaning eventually you'll learn that you only press it whenever you need to dive. So it's a little bit of muscle memory. It takes a little bit of time. It took me about a week and a half to memorize it and really get into it in Warzone. But once I had it, and I have rarely accidentally messed it up just from accidentally squeezing my controller. So because of that, hybrid, in my personal opinion, is the best because you tap to slide like you would before, but now you have the option to dive. If you want to go sideways, you press that left analog stick in, and then you dive with your circle, right? So you press and you dive, press, dive, and you just go back and forth just like that. Now, I don't necessarily recommend using this to fight enemies in most scenarios. There are options where instead of jumping and turning around on an enemy, what I'll do is I'll dive over them. If they're like sat in a corner somewhere, I'll dive over them, and then mid dive, I'll turn around, and they always expect you to be standing. So when they see you jumping, they'll shoot at chest height so that they can maximize damage. But the issue is I'm not at chest height. I'm laying on the ground, dove right below you, shooting up at your chest and your head. So I have the advantage in that situation. And I think doing that is going to make a big difference in your gameplay. So I highly recommend you set it up as hybrid. I know it's annoying to memorize, but hybrid is going to make a big difference in your gameplay. The next thing is turn off automatic airborne mantle. If you want to mantle something in midair, set that, or like do that yourself, right? Sprint restore, keep that to on. It's basically, it says it resumes sprinting after various actions without being required to press L3 again, which again is saving you from that stick drift eventually. Slide maintain sprint, basically the same thing, but after you perform a slide. Parachute automatic behavior, set that to off. If you set it to free fall or always, you will randomly pull out your chute when you don't want to, and it's going to get you killed for free. Mantle cancels reload, for the love of God, turn that off. Movement advanced settings, we'll go ahead and dive in here because there's a couple of these that make a big difference. So if you ever find yourself trying to jump through a window and you're hopping at the window over and over and over, and you look like an absolute moron and you can't figure out what's going on, someone told you to turn off grounded mantle. Grounded mantle, believe it or not, is actually very good, even if sometimes you accidentally mantle over things when you don't mean to. I think they need to fix that. I don't think it has to do with the grounded mantle. I think it just has to do with the fact that they didn't set up buildings correctly, or they didn't set up the mantling system correctly. But this will save your life more than it'll get you killed, because if you're trying to, outmaneuver somebody, you have to be able to go through windows, and grounded mantle on is the only way to actually go through windows, because your character is slightly too big for every window. So you have to mantle through them. The next thing, auto move forward, turn that off. Auto door peek, that is, dude, if you have that on, you've lost all my respect. Turn that off. What the hell are you doing, you freak? So make sure you turn that to off. And then tactical sprint activation. This one, most people are going to tell you the wrong thing. One, it starts at double tap, but most people are going to tell you single tap sprint. That is not correct. You want to, as quickly as physically possible, be able to tactical sprint. And running, basically, if you're sprinting, now obviously we have the assist on, but if you're sprinting, and say if I keep going like this, I should be able to run out of sprint. You can see this is sprinting. You'd have to be doing this before you can press your left analog stick in to activate your tactical sprint. Now this won't really affect you if you have your assist on, but I have to recommend in every capacity that you go ahead and set this to a single tap run, because when you're just basically walking, if you press that one time, you're tactical sprinting. Again, this shouldn't necessarily affect you as long as you have those assist settings on, but make sure it's set to this just in case something happens, the settings break or something like that. The next thing is plunging underwater. There's only a few places where you can actually go underwater in Verdansk, but I still recommend you set that to free instead of trigger. Sprinting door bash, make sure that is set to on. The next thing we're going to be taking a look at are the vehicle advanced settings, which of course the vehicle control mode I personally set to driver control. The score streak vehicle control mode I set to driver control. Vehicle camera recenter, it's very important that you turn this to off, or if you're trying to center an enemy while you're driving, it'll automatically flick back forward, which is not something that you want in any capacity, because when you're looking at an enemy while you're driving, if you jump out, you can actually keep looking at that enemy because you're looking their direction. So if it automatically flicks back, then you will miss that, or you'll be caught right in the process of looking at one of the other things and you won't be centered on the enemy anymore. The same thing goes for free look on the camera initial position. I like to hop into my vehicle looking the direction that I'm already looking. That way I know where I'm going to go next. So what I'll do is I'll set that to free look so that when I hop into the vehicle, if I'm looking a specific direction, I'll immediately just press and hold the gas and turn to go that direction. Lean out activation, completely up to you. Obviously, if you feel you need to set it to ADS, that's fine. I find that I continuously forget that it's set to melee, but I don't often shoot out of the passenger seats. I'm usually the driver in my vehicle, so that's why I don't usually have that issue, but completely up to you. Finally, we're moving into the combat section, and these should be pretty self-explanatory. Actually, most of these should be already set to, choose the, ooh, that's not good. Okay, so we have the aim down sight behavior, of course, set that to hold. Tactical stance behavior, set that to toggle. Tactical stance activation, ADS plus down button. Weapon mount activation, ADS plus melee. Of course, you can change this if you feel like you prefer it some other way. Dedicated melee weapon activation. Now, if you're on controller, this is almost impossible to memorize. So I highly recommend you set this to hold melee. It is not perfect. It's not a perfect mechanic. You will often die because you'll whack the air. But if you set it to weapon cycle, you'll never be able to memorize when you hop into a match which weapon is where in your inventory, because you'll now have 3 weapons. And if you say try to keep your SMG in your first slot, you're going to assume that it's always in your first slot, right? So you'll go to switch weapons thinking you're switching to one or the other, and you'll accidentally pull out your melee weapon, or you'll pull out the wrong weapon, or whatever it may be. So I highly recommend keeping that on hold melee. As for body shield, I prioritize body shield because I'm incredibly toxic whenever I play Warzone solos and I like to pick people up and slam them into a wall. Armor plate behavior, it starts on apply one, set that to apply all, because otherwise you're gonna try and one by one, it'll plate up, zip, plate up, zip, plate up, zip. You wanna plate, zip. That way when you're in a gunfight, you don't have to think about it constantly. C4 detonation, set this to 1 by 1 so that you can throw a C4 and explode the C4, because if you set it to all at once, you will not be able to do that. So you have to throw both C4s before you can explode even one of them if you set this to all at once. Equipment behavior, of course, set that to hold. Manual fire behavior, don't set that to hold because, and I'll show you right here, if we change the loadout over to this pistol, oh, see, it doesn't activate properly. So if I constantly tap this trigger, actually I've set this up to where it's the mouse click and it won't even let me do it. Yeah, this is super weird. So sometimes it'll just break entirely. You'll see that it has those little, I'm like tapping as fast as physically possible, and it's got like this little jitter in how it allows you to shoot. And then like if I press and hold, this is as fast as it'll go. But if we go back into our settings, we set that to press, I can show you I'm like super fast at shooting my pistol. It's very clear the difference. You absolutely should not in any capacity set it to that unless I can't think of the weapon. There's a single weapon that you need it for, and if I ever make a video on it again, it's not a weapon that you will ever use, to be clear, but there's a single weapon that you need to set it to hold, and that fixes a lot of things for it, but I do not recommend it outside of whatever the hell that weapon was. It was like a video that I did a year ago, so I have not used it since, and therefore I have kept it on press. The next thing is we have our combat advanced settings here. These again are pretty important. A lot of people are going to have this set to prioritize reload. Now, I do a weird thing whenever I'm playing Warzone, and it's something that I've memorized because of Urzikstan being broken with picking up weapons. You sometimes would pick up guns that you don't want to pick up because you're tapping to reload. Don't do that. Just don't do it. So you have tap to reload, which actually you can see tap to reload is tap to reload, hold to interact. Tap to interact is tap to interact, hold to reload, which is technically what we're going to be doing, but I feel that kind of messes me up sometimes. So in, multiplayer, what you're going to want to do is prioritize reload. It is tap to reload and interact, but it's tap to reload, hold to interact when they're both available simultaneously. So that's great for multiplayer. Do not use that in Warzone because you are often going to be picking things up more than you are reloading. That is the fact of life. You loot a ton in this game, which is kind of the whole point of it. So you want to set it to prioritize interact so that you tap to interact. And then at all times, I know this is goofy, at all times, make sure you are holding to reload. You will reload instantly, no matter what, but you still have to hold to reload. So if you're not near an item to pick up, it'll instantly reload. But if, say, you were to set this to tap to interact, you would actually always have that little bit of delay in your reload, which is why I recommend that prioritize interact. So you're still going to hold the reload all the time, but it'll be faster whenever there's nothing around you. So you memorize it that way, and it'll improve as time gets on, and you'll continue to do that over and over and over. Sprint cancels reload, make sure to set that to off. It's actually bugged. Akimbo behavior, I set that to paired, but it's probably better on independent. So I'm gonna actually switch it back to independent. I had that for a very specific thing. ADS stick swap, absolutely keep that set to off. And depleted ammo weapon switch, set that to on, because if you run out of bullets in your weapon, it should automatically switch to your other weapon if there's literally 0 ammo. Otherwise, it's just gonna reload. So moving forward, scoreboard map stats toggle is what I have it set to. I think that that's probably much better because if you set it to hold, you have to press a button to be able to mark something on your map. Overlay settings, inventory control, obviously set that to directional buttons. But a weird thing that you can do is if you set it to stick, you can actually pull up your inventory and auto tack sprint. Don't recommend it. I think it's a goofy thing to do, but some people do that so that they can auto tack sprint around the map while inventory managing. But it doesn't really seem necessary in any capacity if you have those back paddles on your controller from getting a pro controller on expel.gg, which once again, I recommend. Double tap danger ping delay, set that to probably moderate or short. It just seems like a lot of people accidentally double tap. I don't know why, but I set it to moderate just because I seen that it works the best. Emotes and spray wheel position, set it to default. There's no reason to set it to centered. It's unnecessary. So we've made it out of controller settings, and the next thing we're gonna move into are graphics. Now, while you may be on PS5, while you may be on Xbox, these settings will be different. You may be missing settings, but there are a ton of settings and a ton of information in this section that I'm going to explain that may make a difference for you if you have those settings. Do not skip over this just because you have a PS5 or an Xbox. Follow through as closely as you can, and if you don't have those settings, it's okay. Just wait for the next setting that you see that I'm going to get to. Off rip, if you're on PC, I highly recommend you do full screen exclusive. One, not only is this going to help with screen tears, it's also going to help to basically keep your game running at the highest FPS possible. It is super weird with display modes. So if you set it like full screen borderless, I found that I lose like 30 frames. I'm not kidding. But if you set it to exclusive, then it's much better. You cannot, if you're on mouse and keyboard, move that mouse from one monitor to the other because you're on exclusive, but you can press the Windows key to get out of the game and do that. So that's what I would recommend. Next up, make sure your display monitor is set to whatever your monitor is. As you can see, I'm using the PG27UCDM. This is a 4K, 240 hertz monitor. I have a ton of recommended stuff on expel.gg. If you want to go check it out, you don't have to get a 4K monitor, but I do have a bunch of monitors over there that are my recommended that I think will make a difference in your gameplay. I recently switched to this monitor because it's OLED and I can see things so much clearer. It is insane the difference that this made in my gameplay. I'm not telling you to get this exact monitor, but check out the ones that I recommend over on expel.gg and you might find something you like. The same thing goes for headphones. The same thing goes for gear and equipment. I always keep it up to date over on expel.gg. That way you can get the best value gear. Do not go over there, find something and get something similar that is cheaper, because I promise you, when I say best value, it is the best bang for your buck. If you get something cheaper, there is a likelihood you are going to return it and you have to go through all that hassle, probably lose out on some of the money that you spent or pay for shipping on the way back. I have done a ton of research to make sure this stuff is the best. Another thing that we'll get into is headphones when we get to the audio section, but let's wait until we get there to talk about that. So you can see that I actually have two monitors here. This is just my capture card. So I display a duplicated version of this screen over to my capture card, and the reason why is basically like I have a 240 hertz refresh rate, but my capture card doesn't allow me to send that 240 hertz into it because 4K 240 it's not capturable. It doesn't exist in the world right now for anything that you can capture. So I have to send a 60 frame per second version over to the capture card so that I can upload that to YouTube. And the way that I set it up, it also gets rid of any screen tearing so that you don't have to see those constant like your screen chopping in the middle whenever you watch my videos. There's been times that I've messed that up and I didn't set it up right, and you've probably seen those in videos in the past. Display resolution, make sure this is set to your max resolution. If you set it to lower, your game's gonna look like absolute garbage. I'm not kidding, it will look like trash. And your aspect ratio, obviously set it to automatic. Display gamma is kind of up to you. Some people will prefer the BT1886 version, but I find that if you're on a really good monitor, sRGB is going to be your go-to. My brightness, because I am on an OLED and it has some sort of dynamic brightness that comes with it. Not brightness, but like contrast, shadows, stuff like that. I set mine to 50% so that everything looks the way that it's supposed to look. I don't know if I would recommend that to everybody. In fact, most people I'd actually recommend, if you have an IPS panel or a TV that isn't OLED, set that literally all the way up to like 63 or something like that so that you can actually see people in the shadows. But personally, I have mine set to 50 because I have an OLED monitor. As for NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, I set mine to on plus boost. A lot of people will just need on. I set mine to plus boost because it works best for my PC and my system. As a quick heads up, I do have a 4090, a 9800X3D, 48 gigabytes of RAM at like 8,000 megahertz. So I have a beastly PC so that I can get that 4K and super high quality. Of course, I'm on a crazy system. You probably aren't on a crazy system. I don't expect you to be in any capacity, but it doesn't mean that you can't win with the settings I'm going to show you. Next up, we have the eco mode. If you have this set to efficiency or low consumption, you are killing your frames per second. You are killing yourself in the game, so do not do that. Set it to custom. Let your system send as much energy as it needs to send. VSync, turn this to off. if you are on a monitor, you will not, like if you have a monitor with G-Sync or FreeSync, I think is the AMD version, you will not have an issue with this most likely, as long as you are sending more frames than your computer or than your monitor needs, basically. The same thing goes for your VSync menus. You just don't need it. Custom frame rate limit. Now, I have changed my decision on this. Before, I would recommend that you set your gameplay custom frame rate limit to basically a little bit higher than your frame rate limit on your monitor. So for me, if I go back up to the top here, you can see I have a screen refresh rate of 240 hertz. However, I would naturally set that to 245 so that I'm not using more of my GPU than I need to. But looking further into this, I found that sure, you're going to use more power. You are going to use your system a little bit more. But if you set it to unlimited, you will have a snappier gameplay response. So I do recommend now setting this to unlimited. I don't think that you can do unlimited just on one. Yeah, you have to set them all to unlimited. Just let them go crazy. There's nothing you can do about it. Reduce menu render resolution. This is just going to help in the smallest way with frames. Set that to maximal. That way you're lowering the resolution of your menu rendering. Pause game rendering, set that to off. Reduce quality when inactive, set that to off. Focused mode, set that to 0. If you set it anywhere above 0, if you have a second monitor on your computer, it will immediately make that screen go black. Set it to 0, for the love of God, because otherwise you literally will not be able to see your other monitor. So if you're a streamer or something like that, you won't be able to see your chat over there, and you won't be able to check out how your OBS is doing or whatever it may be that you're doing on your other monitor. If you have HDR, this is entirely up to you. I keep it off. It's super complicated to set up for a lot of people, but I set mine personally to off. We're going to apply my settings, keep it there, and we're moving into the quality settings. Now, for it doesn't matter what your graphics preset is, because it's going to automatically change the custom as soon as you change your settings. So your render resolution should be set to whatever your resolution was. So over here, you can see my display resolution is 3840 by 2160. Your quality can be set to 3840 by 2160 as well. For you, it might be 2560 by 1440 or 1920 by 1080. If you're on a 720p monitor, stop gaming. Yeah. Dynamic resolution. This is actually something that PlayStations and Xboxes have, or they may just automatically force you to use depending on the system that you have. And it'll basically make it to where it doesn't render at the same rate. I don't even know if I can really explain this. So I'm going to turn it on. And basically what it does is your render rate, if it needs to get you to your desired frame rate, right? If it needs to get you there, it'll actually, and I wonder if I can change this. So my resolution target is set to 60. So if I change this to 300, you'll notice, and I don't even know if y'all will be able to see this because of compression, it actually looks a little worse. Like, it actually looks just a little bit worse. So of course, if you're really, really struggling, you can change that. But I do not recommend it in any capacity. It'll make your game look like trash, and it makes it really hard to see targets at a distance. So I do not turn that on. Turn it off, keep it off. I'm going to apply the settings, and we're going back into it. The next thing, do not use any other setting here. Under any circumstances, do not use any other setting here. This game uses something called TAA. Okay, that is a certain type of anti-aliasing that makes your game look like trash. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the difference. We're going to hop in. I'm going to click apply. You can see if you can barely see. I'm going to zoom in for you. You can see that back here, this character's a little bit fuzzy, right? And now you can see that the character is just a little bit more sharper. What that is I've actually turned on the sharpening filter, which is Fidelity Cast. This is going to make it to where you get a sharper gameplay, and it's very, very minimal when it comes to performance. You will probably lose 3 frames. 3. And your game will be much sharper. You don't have to use any NVIDIA custom whatever on the game. Please, for the love of God, don't do that. It is terrible for your game. You lose so many frames, and if you don't believe me, go ahead. Stupid, makes your game look like trash. It is not a good look, and if you are a streamer and you're using that, you're a weirdo. Turn it off, use Fidelity Cast. If you need it sharper than that, get a better monitor. Like, it is that simple. Do not use NVIDIA filters. They make your game run worse, and they look terrible, okay? So I like to keep this on Fidelity Cast, and to ensure that I get the sharpest gameplay, I set it to 100%. 100%. Now, a lot of people will tell you if you want to get a ton of frames, you got to turn on frame generation. If you turn on frame generation, your game, once again, will not play right. Things come in that should not be there. It is fake frames that are rendered. Now, you may not be able to see it like on this again because it like loads it in different parts, but if you're trying to look at an enemy and you have a frame generating that's not supposed to be there, what'll end up happening is it'll generate that fake frame and you won't be shooting where that target actually is sometimes. It can be a literal millisecond of difference, but that millisecond is your life. If you've ever been one shot ever, that millisecond is your life. So I cannot recommend turning on frame generation. The same goes for AMD FSR frame generation. VRAM target scale. If you have nothing else running on your computer and you are just gaming, set this to as high as it'll go. In fact, there is a specific setting that you can do in the files that you can set this higher than 100%. For me, I've got it set to 90%, but you know, again, if you have anything running in the background, you may want to change this. Say you're on like a 3060 or something like that on your graphics card. You may need to set that to 70% so that your computer has enough overhead to run in general. If you have a good PC, if you have something that you've spent $1,000 on, you can probably set this to 85 to 90%. And you'll be absolutely fine. Variable rate shading, again, is something that console users may have by default. This is something that basically, and I'll read it to you, activate a technique that improves performance at low visual cost by controlling where additional quality is needed in the image. Now, it does say that you need to reboot the game for it to work. I'm not going to do that because it's stupid, but don't do that unless you're really struggling with frames. It does help you with frames, absolutely. But for me, I'm someone that looks at every corner of my screen. I'm looking everywhere. In fact, we might have to do an eye tracker video so that you can see how I play. But I'm looking absolutely everywhere on my screen, and if something's lower quality, I'm gonna notice it, and I'm not gonna be able to see the things that I need to see because the game is dynamically adjusting based on what it thinks you need to see. And I'm guessing it assumes that you're tunnel visioned. So I like to keep variable rate shading turned off, and you'll notice because I'm in 4K, I actually turn all of these settings to low. Obviously, I could turn them up and still get really good frames. I'm not trying to take away from that. In fact, I had my PC tuned by Trap Tuning over on Twitter. He is incredible. He does a great job on everything that I've ever done. He did my streaming PC, my gaming PC. Any problems I've ever had with other tuners, he fixed it. He has always like called me up and been like, hey, I need to make sure your PC is running right. You need to give me an update. So altogether, I cannot recommend him enough. I love this dude. He is super incredible at what he does. And honestly, just been the biggest help of anybody I've worked with. He's not paying me to say this. I've paid him lots of money to do these PCs. I just love the dude. I think he's an incredible guy. He will shoot the shit with me every time I call him, and he will give it to me like it is whenever I mess something up so that I can get it fixed, so that I can get my PC that I spent an outrageous amount of money on running like a dream. So of course, if you're trying to get the most frames out of your game, this is exactly the settings that you need to follow. Set your texture resolution to low, your texture filter set to low, depth of field turn it to off, detail quality set it to low. Depth of field, by the way, is incredibly stupid. I'll show you why. If you set this to on and you apply it, when I ADS, you'll notice that the gun is a little bit blurry, right? The gun's a little bit blurry. And you'll also notice if I actually zoom in right here, you can see that there's a little blur except for that very center part of my screen, right? So everything around that center part in that close range is literally blurred out. So sometimes if you're actually in the game, you may notice something around you happening, right? But if you have depth of field on, you often will have that blurred out. Sure, you're still gonna see the movement, but it'll be blurred out, so you literally can't tell exactly what it is. And so I always recommend having that set to off. Detail quality, sometimes you set that to high depending on how your graphics are doing, but I set mine to low. I don't see a big deal with it. But sometimes I'll set it to high so that I can get like higher quality screenshots. And you can see that my game, you know, I'm on all low settings. This thing still looks gorgeous. I don't have any issues with it, but if you're on 1080p, you may need to change some of these settings just a little bit higher. Specifically the textures, if you're on 1080p, you may want to set that to normal. But I have mine set to low. You can go very low, but I'll show you the difference right here. So if I'm on very low, you can see that these right here are kind of like blurred out, right? But if I set it to low and I click apply, they get a little less blurred out. Those lines get a little bit closer to a sharper line. And the higher I go on this, you'll see that this gets super high quality on the texture resolution. And now everything looks great, but it's at the cost of your frames in a big way. Whenever you go in your settings, you can see that texture resolution has a high effect on your VRAM, which is your graphics card. So if you want to get the most frames out of it, I would set yours to low. You can go very low, but at that point, stop playing Call of Duty. That's what I'd say. Very low will run your system like dry already. Like if you're already running your system dry and you need very low, you're not gonna be able to see anything anyway, so there's no point in playing. Like that's basically what I would say. So with that in mind, we're gonna set that to low. Texture filter any, so whatever the hell that is, you don't need it. It will not affect your gameplay in any capacity. Detail quality, like I said, set it to high. Particle resolution, that does not matter. That is only like particles around explosions, set it to low. Bullet impacts, a lot of people are gonna turn these off. Turn them on. Like the amount of frames you lose is so minuscule that it's stupid. You need that to know where people are shooting you from, the angles. So I like to keep mine set to on. Persistent effects, no, turn that off, restart your game, get it going. Keep that off because that actually is like a lot of like the visual effects around characters that make it super annoying to like shoot at people. So I like to keep that off. Shader quality, you don't need that either. Turn it to off, or turn it to low, I mean. On-demand texture streaming. Now these are a little bit complicated. What I like to do is I set it to minimal. I set the allowed texture cache to 32, download limit set to on, and my daily limit set to 1 gigabyte. So I'm always staying under these numbers. And then local texture streaming quality. Honestly, it's not a huge deal if you set it to normal, but I do find you do lose some frames. So setting that to low, probably your best bet. Shadow quality, it is a little interesting if you set these to ultra, right? It is very clear that these shadows kind of fade out as you go up there. Everything looks a little bit better. They've got a little bit more of a natural shadow, but it's unnecessary, and it's probably a little bit worse whenever you have a person above you and the sun's beating down and you're trying to see their shadow. So what I like to do is I'll set that to low or very low, and it's a little bit sharper around these like shadows on stuff, but it is much, much better for being able to see enemies quickly moving because of those jagged lines moving very like fast. Screen space shadows, unnecessary. Absolutely do not need it. Occlusion, turn that to off as well. Screen space reflections, turn that to off. Static reflection quality, if you turn this on, why? You don't need to see yourself in a mirror on a car that has chrome. That's stupid. Set that to low. Tessellation, set that to near. A lot of people set this to off. Near is, in my opinion, pretty necessary if you don't want your game to look weird around the edges of your screen. So I set it to near. Volumetric quality, set it to low. That's as low as it goes, but basically it's kind of like the haze that you get around windows. You don't need the haze. It makes your game look a little bit weird. Deferred physics quality, set that to off. Weather grid, set that to off. And finally, water quality, set that to water caustics. If you turn on wave wetness, imagine basically right here. This is the edge of the water. Basically what would happen is if the water was to rush up right here, you would see like around this area, like a kind of reflection, a little bit of a shimmer from the water hitting the sand. That's what that is. It does the same thing on your character. It shows that you've been in water. It's unnecessary. You absolutely in no capacity need that at all. So set that to water caustics so that you can see better in the water, but you don't need wave wetness. Next up, we're going to view. This is actually one that I think a lot of people are gonna like or not like. So I'm gonna go through and explain kind of the differences. Back in the day when Verdansk first launched, everybody had this FOV, okay? Everybody had this right here. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna pause it real quick. And this is the difference between what I could see before and what I can see now. It is absurd the difference that you get by having a higher FOV. If you're playing on console, you have the option to do 120 FOV. A lot of streamers, a lot of creators are going to tell you that it makes a difference on your aim assist if you set it to 120. So set it to a lower number like 90 or 105 or something like that. That is not how aim assist works in the slightest. It does not affect your aim assist. It affects your perception of aim assist. So if you are further away from your TV, you may actually want to punch that into like 107, 112, something like that, so that it's easier to perceive that aim assist and understand how it works. But that's completely up to you. It does not affect your aim assist. I play on 120 FOV every single day. I have never had an issue with aim assist, and it works for me all the time. Again, I have a great video explaining aim assist on my main channel, which we are going to redo for Verdansk, but it will change the game for you. If you do not understand aim assist and how it works, or you feel like maybe you're losing aim assist all the time, that video explains every scenario and how you can activate it 24/7. So go check that out on the main channel. With that in mind, you can, of course, set this to 112. If you are not perceiving your aim assist, change it to 112. Hell, go in, change it to 105 if you need to. I know a lot of streamers do this. I think it's incredibly dumb. I'm going to be honest. If you have a decent shot on you, setting that to 112 or 105 is completely and utterly pointless. It is unneeded. If you have a decent shot, set it to 120. The next thing is you'll notice affected field of view. When I ADS, I don't lose much around me, right? But if I go in and I set this to independent, you'll notice it zooms in all the way. So I'm missing out on a lot of the stuff moving around me. Also, it doesn't change my sensitivity. So when I do this, I'm actually more likely to miss shots, which is a little weird and kind of hard to understand, but it is a thing. And you'll notice that you'll miss way more shots if you have it set up this way, because you'll think you have to go farther because you're zoomed in farther. But you don't. You have the same sensitivity, so it'll feel like you're flicking way faster. So I don't recommend having this on. What I'll do is I'll set mine to affected. It should already be set to affected, but set it to affected. Next, you can set this to narrow. So when you ADS, your gun takes up more of your screen, or you can set it to wide and your gun takes up less of your screen. It's very minuscule. You probably won't notice it, but I recommend setting it to wide so that you can see more. Third person field of view, completely up to you. Vehicle field of view, set that to wide as well, because then you can see how more around you while you're in a vehicle. World motion blur, I'm gonna turn these on and I'm gonna show you. This looks like shit. If you are turning and you have motion blur on, tell me how I'm supposed to see that there's anyone anywhere, right? I'm going back and forth. It's probably super pixelated for you because of YouTube compression, but how am I supposed to see anything whenever I have those on, right? There's no one. There's never been anybody there, ever. No matter what system you're on, you can turn these off. For the love of God, turn them off. You don't need it. It will not make you a better player. It'll make you a much worse player. Someone told me that if you turn on weapon motion blur, then it doesn't affect what you're seeing around you, but it allows you to not render as many frames for the controller, so you actually get more frames on your game. I'm pretty certain that's a load of horse shit, so don't do that either. I don't know who said that, but that's crazy that you would do that. It looks like trash. It feels like trash, and it is super awkward, to be quite honest. So set that to off. If you find yourself constantly shaking all over the place and you feel like everything's moving on your screen, that's because you have this set to 100%. Change first person and third person camera movement to 50%. This is gonna make it where there's much less shake on your screen so that you can get that streamer aim. As an example of what's going on with a lot of people, they're setting theirs to independent. They have their FOV set to 80, their weapon field of view set to narrow. They have this set to 100. They have world and weapon motion blur on, and their screen looks like this. I kid you not, this is what's going on. And you're like, dang, my guns don't shoot like that. I can't hit a shot. I can't even see what I'm shooting at. That's because your settings are wrong. You've been getting them wrong for a long time, and the only way to fix it is by changing those settings. Streamers do not have the wildest lack of recoil. Not everybody's using a Cronus. It's literally just you set up your settings right, and you learn what they mean, and you learn what they do. And that's why I'm going in and explaining every single detail of these settings to you, is so that you can fix it. So if you don't want to look like this, make sure you go into your settings, 120 or 105 or 112. Those are your good numbers. Set your ADS field of view to affected, wide on your weapon field of view, turn off world and weapon motion blur, then set these to 50. That is going to make the biggest difference. It is that simple. So turn those off. And inverted flashbang, this is up to you, but I find that I can see better in brightness than I can in darkness. So if my screen goes dark, I get flashbanged and my screen goes dark, I'll not be able to see as much, right? When it's coming back up from the darkness. But if I have it set to bright, as long as I don't have, you know, like seizures or anything like that, then I won't have any issues with that. So I can see more in brightness than I can in darkness, so I highly recommend you set your inverted flashbang to off. Moving into the audio section, there are quite a few things that are weird that people get wrong constantly, and I see a lot of other creators getting this very wrong. First thing I'm going to tell you is that I do personally use a software outside of Call of Duty to adjust the frequencies of my audio. I do not use anything. I will never, under any circumstance, use anything to change the in-game files to make it where I don't hear my own footsteps, to make it where I don't hear PAs or anything like that. I'm never gonna do some kind of tuning on my audio to give me an outrageously unfair advantage by literally removing these things. But you can change your own frequencies in the audio in the game if that's what you like to do. For me, I just like the tuning outside of it. I think it's simpler and I think it works better. At least for my ears, because everybody's ears are completely different. Now for you, you may notice that you're using probably like Astros or some other gaming headset like Turtle Beaches, and some people have issues hearing certain things, right? This is actually a very interesting setup with people's like headphones, because gaming headphones suck. I'm gonna give it to you straight, gaming headphones suck. I have set up on my website, expel.gg, basically my recommended headphones. I talk about this a lot, but I recommend open back headphones. I personally use the 250 ohm headphones from Bear Dynamic, I believe. Yeah, I think Bear Dynamic, the DT990 Pros. I don't want you to get the 250 ohms, because if you get the 250 ohms, you have to get an amp. I was a moron. I got the 250 ohms. I had to buy an amp right after I bought them. I have on my website the 80 ohm headphones if you want to do this and you don't need a microphone attached. In fact, I wonder if I can actually pull this up. On expel.gg. I don't know if this is actually going to work. No, it's not going to work. Give me 2 seconds. So as you can see on my website, obviously we still have merch available if y'all are interested in it. We've got the It's Good to Be Back tee. We've got the See You in the Gulag tee. But if you scroll a little bit down, you can go to my gear section, or you can click on merch, gear, controller, stuff like that at the top of my website. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gear. We of course have the Pro controller, which is what I mentioned earlier. And if you go to that, you can see there's that massive no limit sale, $189 Xbox, PlayStation 5, PS4 controllers. It ends at the end of the month. I highly recommend you go grab it as soon as physically possible. We've got a frequently asked questions section for those. But if you go to gear, you can see my streaming and gaming gear, my console gear, and then my personal gear. So my personal gear, you can see I've got the 990 Pros and an amp. I do not recommend my personal gear to a lot of people because I have a very specific setup for a very specific set of items. You can also see, like I said, my monitor down here, the 27-inch 4K OLED. That is what I recommend. Personally, if you can afford it, it's outrageous. But going back to gear, we have the recommended gaming and streaming gear. If you need a microphone, I will tell you always to get this, okay? This is what I'll recommend. Go and grab the EPOS PC 38X. This is going to make it to where you can hear things a little bit better because of a widened sound floor. Things sound much more specific whenever you are listening, right? So I highly recommend you go check those out. And if you're in the market for a new set of headphones, those work on Xbox, PlayStation, and they work on PC. So they're truly incredible. I personally use these because I have a separate microphone, and I would recommend these if you have a separate microphone that you already use. So I have the DT990 Pros right here. They, in my opinion, are incredible. I know there's a lot of other headphones that are probably better, but these work best for my ears because I have very good hearing and I hear the highs and the lows very well. So a studio grade headphone makes a massive difference. So I would recommend grabbing a pair of EPOS PC 38Xs or DT990 Pros. No, I am not sponsored, but if you click on those, it goes through an Amazon link where I do get an affiliate commission. With that in mind, let's dive back into my audio settings so that I can kind of explain what I would recommend for you. Personally, I use a fiber optic, I use an optical cable for my audio to run to my Go XLR, which is where I get the audio sent to me through, again, the amp and then into my headphones. Super complicated. You don't need that. Plug your headphones into the PC. That's it. That's all you got to do, right? So set that up however you get the highest quality audio. If you can, set it to 7.1 surround sound. That way everything sounds as clear as physically possible. Enhanced headphone mode. Do not turn this on. It is ass. It is terrible. It is bad on your CPU. It is not good. It is awful. Now, if you are on headphones that are Astros, Turtle Beaches, something that is a gamer headphone, you're going to automatically get boosted lows. Okay. That is not good. So what I like to do, and a lot of people that have Astros also do the same thing, I like to actually run Sucker Punch, but if you set up different things, you may find it works better with home theater. So home theater also gives you a little bit better of surround sound, which is what a lot of people like to use. I like to use Sucker Punch because that's the way I've got my headphones set up. It's a little bit tighter. The frequencies come in the way that my ears work with them. This is all basically up to you, which kind of sucks, but I like to use Sucker Punch because of the way that I have my audio set up. Do not, for the love of God, at any point in time, turn on mono audio. It makes left and right audio channels the exact same thing, so you'll never have any idea what's going on. Asymmetrical hearing compensation. As you can see, it says a custom audio profile to adjust the intensity of selected frequencies for each ear to compensate for the differences in hearing sensitivity. Enabling this setting will help balancing the sound field to appear symmetrical toward both ears in order to increase the accuracy of audio cues in the game. What I've found is that this will actually lower the sound of precision airstrikes and things of that nature so that it's a little bit easier on your ears. I don't use it, but I know a lot of people stand by this, right? So we have that right there. If you are struggling to hear things over other things, set this to on and then go in and configure your frequency settings. This is really annoying. I'm sorry, I can't really help it, but you've got these frequency settings. So what I would recommend is going in, setting this to -50. So you turn that all the way back to -50. 500 hertz, set that to -50 as well. We have the 1K, set that to 50. Oh, sorry, we're on the wrong one. I'm just gonna type it in. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna back out and type these in so that you can actually just follow it. Give me 2 seconds. So I've gone ahead and I've set up the left frequency and the right frequency to the exact same thing. Keep your asymmetrical hearing off if you are gonna set these frequencies, but do negative, these are the exact same for left and right. So it's -50, -50, 50, 50, -50, -50, -50, -50. So the frequencies that are boosted there are better for footsteps, so you're gonna hear footsteps a little bit better. Again, I do not use it like this, but if you are struggling to get those same like tunes and stuff like that you hear all these people are using, you can change it in the game. It will help you. Very similarly to the way that you hear on this person's stream, that person's stream. Some people take it a little bit too far, I will say. Some people absolutely do. I am not one of those people. I just want to be able to not have my ears blown out, which is why I use what I use. With that in mind, moving forward, we have reduced tinnitus sound. I set that to on because I don't want to feel weird. And because we're back in Warzone 1, I set my hit marker preset to classic, which I think is great. Next up, voice chat. This is going to help your team more than anything. And we're actually going to talk about the quick settings, which I find is super helpful for a lot of people, specifically me, because I have deleted every quick setting out of here so that I can just have it set up for audio. Let's go ahead and go through this though. So, well, I actually missed over here. The big thing before we go into voice chat actually is the way that I've got my master game volume set up. What I would recommend is making sure at all times your effects volume and your master game volume are always set to 100. If you have an outside like audio like adjustment thing, that's how you're gonna change it. For me, I have a Go XLR. I lowered it on my Go XLR. That's how I do it. For you, you may have, I don't know, like a little thing in your headphone. You can turn that down. If you have a you know, like a TV, turn that down. Whatever it is that sends audio to you, turn that down. Do not turn down the audio in the game. That is a bad idea. You lose audio fidelity. Do not do that. It'll make a massive difference if you follow this. Dialogue volume, if you're not using the Terminator skin, turn it up. I don't like listening to the Terminator skin curse 24/7, so I hate having it on. So I set that to 0. Gameplay music volume and cinematic music volume. If you dive into a match, you get into an intense moment and you need to hear, music will randomly start playing, especially near the end of the game when it's most important to know what's going on. Turn these off if you want to win more matches. That way you can hear what the hell is going on. Now, moving over to voice chat, apologies for going backwards, but moving over to voice chat, I set my volume to whatever I need it to for whatever teammate. So I'm going to change this and throw it in to my quick settings. I've done this with a few things like proximity chat. Proximity chat, test microphone to make sure my audio is working. So voice chat, proximity chat, and test microphone are all over at quick settings. So as you can see, my voice chat volume set to 68. If I do test microphone, you can see my mic's off. If I turn it on, I can hear myself. Now, interestingly enough, you can actually turn this up. Check, 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 check. And I get louder. So you can actually hear how loud your mic is by testing your microphone and doing voice chat volume. But my random teammates often have either too loud or too quiet. So I'm gonna set that to 60 and we're gonna keep moving. So voice chat, turn that to on. Proximity chat, turn that to on so you know if somebody's within 60 meters and they're talking. If you're in a lower skilled lobby, most often you'll hear somebody talking because no one knows how to set up their audio properly. Body shield chat, turn that on because I think it's hilarious. Last words chat, turn that on because I think it's hilarious. Game chat voice, all lobby at all times. You can change this if you really don't want to hear people, but that's entirely up to you. Voice chat output device, I have this as a separate line. It doesn't matter for you. Set that to whatever your default is. Microphone volume level. If you have your mic set to 100%, you are an asshole. What the hell, dog? Listen to this. Check, check. That is so loud that it echoed back a second time into my mic. No. No, 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 no. Set it to like 10 or 20 or 30 at the most. Because I set mine to like 28. And then we turn it on, check, 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 check. And then that's a decent volume. For me, maybe I turned it up because I have my audio set up properly. And then we go again, check, 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 check. And that's about right. That's where your teammates are gonna wanna hear it. Make sure you have that set up correctly. I have mine set to open mic, but you can actually add this to your quick settings in case you don't want to talk at all times. Set that to push to talk in your quick settings whenever you need it. And I find, again, another thing, super helpful. So microphone mode available to you, completely up to you. If you have mouse and keyboard and you have it set to push to talk, use whatever that key is, whatever. Next up, you see the open mic sensitivity. I set this to 70. You need to set it to whatever it is that's gonna cut out your background noise, but allow you to actually hear yourself talking in the game. Because I have a good mic setup, it works right at 70% because I don't have background noise. So that's why I recommend 70%. Next up, we have mute yourself when joining a channel, turn that off. And then microphone input device, whatever your microphone is, go through and find it. You can see Rara did like audio setup on my stuff a while back, so it's there. We have the interface settings. So let's go ahead and go through here. This is going to change the way that you're actually able to see things in the game, and it's going to make a big difference for you. So interface settings, we have the menu prompts, set that to automatic. So whatever you're on, mouse and keyboard or controller, you can change it there. Gameplay tips, turn that to off. It's a pain in the ass. Skip introduction movie so you can get faster into the game. If you hop in and you dev error or your game crashes and you want to be able to rejoin, if you have this set to on, you have to go through the introduction movie, which means that you miss a minute of being able to rejoin. So you could possibly either die or lose a gulag or whatever it may be because you have to watch an introduction movie. So set this to off. Skip kill cam, set that to off because you want to be able to see people eliminating you, know how it works, and know whether or not they're cheating. Tooltips, I'm setting that to off. I don't need it, but setting it to on may be helpful for those of you that are, struggling, but it also helps you find specific actions and stuff like that. I've kind of left it on, so I'm probably just going to leave it on. I think you should probably do the same. If you feel like you need it, set your telemetry to on so that you know how many frames you're getting, how hot your GPU is. You can see that mine's at 51 degrees. You can see my GPU time's pretty decent. My CPU time's pretty decent. You can see what time of day it is. So set that to off if you don't need it, set it to on if you do need it, or you can even do a custom setup to where it has specific things. For me, my custom is FPS, latency, and packet loss. I don't need to know the rest because I know my computer's running great, again, because of trap tuning. Thank you so much, brother. You're incredible. With that in mind, I'm going to set it to off for now. Telemetry label size, if you can't see it like you're on a TV that's farther away, set it to larger. Network in-game alerts and hardware in-game alert icons, both of those set to on because you want to know when you're really getting packet loss bad. Subtitles set to default, but then visual support preset, make sure that's set to off. Subtitle size set to default. Subtitles background opacity, set it to 0. Menu text size set to default. If you don't need it larger, you can set it to larger if you can't read. It's an option. Text chat text size, set it to default. In fact, I probably should have had that set to largest so that y'all can see it the whole time. So this one right here is going to change the game for you. You might be asking yourself, Expel, how does your game look so good? My game looks like this. My game looks like this, right? How do you get your game to look so good? So what I do is I go in and I go to color customization, go to color filter, set that to filter 2 and set it to both. And then whenever I hop out, you can see my game is super punchy, super vibrant, and looks way better. It allows me to see differences between enemies and buildings and stuff like that. So if you change that setting, it will change your life, at least in the game. I mean, you know. So next up, we have gameplay HUD. This needs to be set to the edge of your screen, of course. We have minimap shape. If you set this to round, you will be missing out on around 40% of the players around you. So if you pop a UAV, you can see 40% less. That is crazy. Set this puppy to square. Minimap rotation, make sure that's set to on so that you can always make proper callouts. The radar, turn that off. If you turn it on, it'll get rid of your minimap. It is a weird setting. I don't know why it exists. It's supposed to be the little backing around your minimap, but what they've done is they've made it to where if you turn this on, it actually gets rid of your minimap and it goes in place of your minimap. I don't know why it does that, but you're probably running into this. And if you are, that's how you fix it. It's pretty much that simple. Compass type. For the love of God, do not put this on the minimap. You'll never call out the correct location. Use horizontal. Put it at the top of your screen. Always have it there. Map assist, auto center, that's fine. You can change this to whatever you want. If you go into the map and you find that you need something going a little bit better, whatever, that's entirely up to you. I have it set to auto center so that it just auto centers every time I open the map. Stamina bar. Do turn this on. You probably won't use it, but knowing when you're running out of stamina is huge so that you know when you need to switch to your melee weapon so that you get infinite attack sprint. So I set mine to display your health so that it's there, but it's not like constantly annoying the hell out of me by being in the center of the screen and covering things that I need to see. Vehicle HUD prompts, entirely up to you. In-game text chat, I have mine turned off because I record stuff. Player names, this is set to full name. Change it to abbreviated. Do not set it to icon because you want to call out proper teammates, but set it to abbreviated because you don't need to know their clan tag. It's unnecessary. Weapon inspect attachment information is going to tell you the attachments whenever you go to inspect a weapon. It doesn't show up in this, but when you do inspect a weapon, it'll show up in the bottom right of your screen. So super, super simple. Keep that set to on. You do not need to turn it off because you'll miss out on whatever weapon you're trying to figure out the attachments for. Custom ping duration is entirely up to you. I don't need it. It is fine for me. It stays whatever the default is and I don't need it. In fact, what you can do, I can't pull up the ping menu, but you can pull up the ping menu. And if you hold I'll show you actually on my controller. Hold the top arrow right here and then tap on this, like press that down like you're trying to melee. It'll get rid of all of your teammates' pings for everybody. It's incredible. I've been using it since they added that and it has made a massive difference in my gameplay, being able to see where I'm trying to go. And I've memorized it super, super quickly. So it's way, way better. Hit marker visuals, of course you want them on. Damage-based hit markers, turn it on. Widget visibility. All of these set to 100%. All of them. 100%. If you really, really need to, set them lower, but not much lower. Most of these things should be set to 100 though. Crosshair, I actually can show you the difference here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you right here. You can see the crosshairs in the center of my screen. Let's actually zoom in, right? You got that crosshair in the center of the screen. We're going to jump. See how the crosshair stays directly in the center right there? But if I'm to go into my settings and I change that to on, it'll actually show where my bullets are going to go. So now if we zoom into the center, when I jump, you can see that that actually bounces outside of the perfect center. So if I'm doing this, it does the exact same thing. It's showing where I hip fire, where most of the bullets are going to go. And that's why when you do that, you want to know where you should actually be aiming. It is massively important, believe it or not. And it's going to make a huge difference in your gameplay once again. So make sure to set that to on. Crosshair spread helps to let you know how much hip fire you're going to have. Make sure to set that to on. Do not change your crosshair color. It is the most frustrating thing to me. Every time I see a Sally's a dog video and he has a red crosshair, they dynamically change colors sometimes so that you know when you are hitting properly. It goes for breaking armor and getting kills and stuff like that. Leave it at default. Do not change this color. Do not. You don't need to change it. If your eyes are that bad, get glasses. I don't know what to tell you, but changing this color is massively negative to your gameplay because you will sometimes lose information by changing that color. So keep it what it is, and then everything else is the same. That's about it. That is literally every single setting. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to improve, you want to get more wins, definitely go check out Expel Pro controllers over on expel.gg. You can get a custom build worth $450 value for $189 by using code Expel right now. All of the frequently asked questions are on my website. Once again, I can actually pull that up for y'all right here. If I pull this up, we can go to the gear, go to the controllers, and you can see I have frequently asked questions at the bottom. Sorry. What's, code Expel's current discount? 189 plus shipping. Why isn't code Expel working? It works. It does work, but it's there just in case. How long until I get my controller? All these questions. Recommended PS5 build for those of you that want it. Should you get Hall effects, which are included in that massive discount? Recommended Xbox build. Can you use PS5 controllers on PS4? So many questions that are super easily answered just by going to the frequently asked questions section. It's going to make a big difference in your gameplay. If you're looking for any gear, go over there as well. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have an incredible remainder of your day. I promise one of these days I'm not going to be sick and I'm not going to sound hoarse, but subscribe for more. Have a good one. Goodbye. See you. Bye. See you. Hey.